it's me, Nemi Noxwood. I wanted to make this video about a month and a half ago, but that did not happen for reasons that I will touch on later. But I am finally here to tell you guys all about my new tattoo. Here she is, in all her glory. I have been obsessed with mermaids for as long as I can remember, probably longer than I have been obsessed with vampires, which is my entire life, basically. When I was a kid, I always loved pretending to be a mermaid. I loved swimming, I loved the sea, and in my head I was supposed to be a mermaid, but woefully I was born human, which I'm honestly still kind of upset about. Growing up, my best friend was my cousin, and she felt the exact same way. She always loved mermaids, she wanted to be a mermaid. As we got older, we grew apart a little bit, as you do. Our interests changed, our friend groups changed. I became a bat. However, I never gave up on this obsession with mer people, and as it turns out, neither did she. A while ago, a post popped up in my Facebook feed of my cousin showing off her new beautiful mermaid tattoo. The tattoo was on her right upper arm, and it was a super cute, bright, colourful, sort of cartoony realism type piece. The next time I saw her, of course I complimented her on her new tattoo, and we had a laugh about how neither of us ever stopped loving mermaids. I told her that I wanted a mermaid tattoo, and then I joked that maybe I should get it on my right upper arm as well. And she actually loved the idea. She thought it would be really fun if we both ended up with mermaids on our right upper arms. So that was kind of when I decided that that was where I was going to put it. However, I sat on the idea for quite a long time after that. I didn't know which artist I wanted this tattoo done by. Then there was also the fact that my idea of what the tattoo was going to look like kept changing. I wasn't sure if I wanted just a mermaid or if I wanted a mermaid and a young man, inspired by the fairy tale The Fisherman and His Soul by Oscar Wilde. For a while I also toyed with the idea of doing like a full sleeve on my right arm, inspired by the characters in my fantasy trilogy. But then about a year and a half ago I decided that I didn't really need all of this extra drama to sort of wrap the tattoo in. I just wanted a mermaid, which was really what I'd wanted all along, but I guess my brain just had to do 8,000 detours first. And then came the hunt for an artist. I went through a lot of different options with this before I settled on the artist that I chose. I knew all along that I wanted a black work mermaid inspired by sort of old school illustrations but also Art Nouveau, and I wasn't quite sure which artist would be able to marry those two styles in a way that wasn't too much one or the other. I ended up settling on an artist called LUCIFERANDLEVIATHANS. Her name is Laura, or Laura, as I'll probably say during this video because switching from English to Danish constantly does my head in. Laura has actually done quite a few tattoos on me throughout the past 2 years. She's done one on my leg and quite a few on my right arm, which I will touch on later. When I first started getting tattooed by her, she was primarily doing shadow puppets and skulls and moths and that sort of spooky stuff. So I didn't really consider her for this tattoo because I just hadn't seen her do anything like that. I hadn't really seen her do people. She did a few portraits, but I didn't really know what full bodies would look like in her style. But then a while ago, she started doing a lot of tattoos inspired by paintings, specifically by the ladies in Bouguereau and Valero paintings, and these were what convinced me that Laura was the right person to go to for this tattoo. So during other tattoo sessions with her, I started sort of hinting that I would like her to do a mermaid tattoo for me, and she said, oh yeah, that's cool, we can do that. All the while apparently thinking that I wanted something really small that she wouldn't be able to add a lot of detail to, so she wasn't that excited about it. But she agreed to it nonetheless, and we set a date for a consultation. When I showed up to the consultation and told her that I wanted my entire upper arm done, as well as potentially a little bit of the lower arm, she was so relieved. She was super relieved that she didn't have to fit all of this detail into some kind of micro tattoo that wouldn't look good, so from then on she was really excited as well. So I told Laura that I wanted my tattoo to be inspired first and foremost by old school pen and ink sort of illustrations of mermaids, and I showed her a lot of pictures of those that I'd found on Pinterest, and I also wanted it to have Art Nouveau elements. We toyed with the idea of adding a sort of Art Nouveau style frame around the tattoo, but we ended up not doing that because it would cap off my arm kind of weirdly with the swirl that I've already got up here. So we left the space open to fill with something else later. Laura and I have a lot of things in common, especially in terms of aesthetic preferences. So basically everything that I said I wanted was something that she was thinking already, and vice versa. So when I told her that I wanted a mermaid that had this sort of old school swirly tail, she went, "So don't hate me now, but may I suggest that we start the tail sort of mid-thigh?" And I was like, dude, I was planning on saying that as the next point on my list of things that I wanted. We also both agreed that we wanted her upper body to be bare but not super sexual. I wanted a mermaid who wasn't sultry and seductive, but rather sort of languid and melancholy, and a mermaid who is naked without being sexualized. And Laura completely agreed with that idea and she loved it so much. So I booked my first session, which was going to be the 25th of October, and then I went home and put together a Pinterest board which I sent to Laura to use as inspiration for this tattoo. As I mentioned, Laura has previously done other tattoos on my right arm, and I've got a few by another artist as well. Now, despite knowing for quite a long time that I wanted a mermaid on my right arm, I went about things a little bit stupidly and got a lot of smaller tattoos before I finally decided to get this mermaid. And these pre-existing tattoos kind of ended up determining the shape that my mermaid was gonna have. So I've got a dagger and a rose on the back of my upper arm, and a cat skull and a tooth on the front. And on my lower arm I've got a conch and a moth. Had my arm been completely bare, Laura would of course have had an easier time positioning the mermaid, but now instead she had to sort of fit her in between all of these other tattoos. However, I'm actually so happy that I ended up doing things in such an untraditional order, because it meant that the curves that Laura ended up doing in this tattoo look so organic that it looks like it was intended to be this way from the very beginning. So as you can see, the tail here, where it fits through the gap created by my conch tattoo and my moth, aligns so perfectly with the crook of my elbow that when I bend my arm, the tail just follows perfectly. It looks like she's swimming, essentially. And if those two other tattoos hadn't been there, I'm not sure we would have thought of positioning the tail exactly there. And I'm just so happy that we did, because it looks so good. So then came my first session on the 25th of October, and it was a breeze, honestly. Admittedly, I only sat for about three and a half hours, so it wasn't like I had to endure a lot in one day. But even so, the upper arm is not a painful spot to get tattooed. I mean, you're still getting tattooed, it's not like it's the most comfortable thing in the world, but on a scale from 1 to 10, I think I'd give this a 3. Perhaps when we got to the bit around the elbow, we approached a 4, but all in all, it's probably the least painful tattoo experience I've ever had. If I hadn't been talking with Laura throughout the session, I probably would have fallen asleep. So I really hoped that we would be able to finish this tattoo in 2 sessions. Laura was a little bit hesitant about that. She said, we're gonna try, but I think we're gonna have to save some of the shading for a 3rd session. So I went back for my 2nd session on the 3rd of December, and as you would expect, Laura was right, we did not finish the tattoo then. Turns out that doing about 5,000 scales takes quite some time. So we agreed that the next session was going to be on the 10th of December. So a week later I went back and we started finishing the tattoo. However, neither of us had thought of the fact that half of the tattoo was still completely fresh from the week before. So Laura was only able to do shading on about half of the tattoo, and the rest we had to wait with until January. So on the 8th of January, I went back and we finally managed to finish this tattoo. All in all, I think this tattoo took somewhere between 10 and 11 hours to finish. In terms of price, now I know that a lot of people aren't really comfortable disclosing how much a tattoo cost, and I haven't really decided how I feel about that, if I'm honest. In this case, however, I have decided not to mention the price of this tattoo because Laura is still an apprentice. This means that her prices now are not exactly representative of the number of hours that she puts into her work. It also means that her prices will change. So if I gave you an estimate of what a piece this size would approximately cost, chances are that such an estimate would be null and void in a few months. That is not to say that you can necessarily gauge the price of a piece by a fully fledged tattoo artist based on what someone else paid, but I definitely think that their prices are a little bit more fixed than the prices of an apprentice, and therefore I have decided not to go into detail about how much I paid for this tattoo. So the final thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit is healing. There are quite a few different ways to heal tattoos, and that is why it's always important to ask your artist what they recommend that you do with the specific piece that you got from them. For this tattoo, Laura wrapped it not in cling film but in Sanaderm, which if you have ever watched treacle tats then you will know what this is. For those of you who haven't, Sanaderm is a kind of breathable, translucent, sticky plaster that you stick directly onto a new tattoo, and for the first 3 to 5 days of healing your tattoo, the plaster will act as a second skin. The reason this is sometimes preferable to cling film is that you don't have to continually take it off and rewrap your tattoo, and generally you also avoid any leakage throughout the first few days. However, I was not quite so fortunate with this tattoo. When you apply Sanaderm, you want it to go on smoothly, because if you get lots of air bubbles underneath, chances are that the plaster will come loose too soon, and then you have to take it off and potentially rewrap your tattoo, which is a bit of a nuisance. Now, because the tail of the mermaid goes onto my lower arm, we had to cover the crook of my elbow in Sanaderm as well, and every time my arm bends, it would create a slightly larger bubble in this area, which meant that it didn't take very long for the Sanaderm to come loose, and then I had to take it off, which was usually a day or two too early. Despite this, however, I didn't have any issues healing this tattoo at all. Due to the placement, it's generally one of the easiest tattoos I've ever healed. I didn't really have any issues with huge scabs or scabs that came off too soon. I just made sure to wear somewhat loose sleeves, and that was really it. I also haven't had any issues with ink falling out. All in all, it's just been an absolute breeze to heal this tattoo. I think the only bit that might need a touch-up that I can tell is possibly some little bits in her hair, because my skin for some reason just wouldn't take ink right here, which I don't know if you can even see that. You probably can't, but there are some bits here that are a little bit lighter than the rest of the black, and I might eventually go back and have that touched up a little bit, but honestly it doesn't bother me at all. She looks completely perfect anyway, so I'm not in a hurry to get that done. So I think I have covered all the things that I wanted to say about my new tattoo. So all that remains for me to do is to thank Laura for this absolutely wonderful piece. I honestly couldn't have asked for a more beautiful tattoo. I am so completely in love with this piece, and it's my new favorite tattoo, which I'm honestly kind of shocked that I'm saying, because for years now my favorite tattoo has been my chest piece, and I didn't think that any other tattoo would ever really beat it, but Laura did that. I will leave all of Laura's social media in the description box. You should definitely go and check her out. She is absolutely incredible, and she is a wonderful human being, an absolute delight to hang out with and be tattooed by, and I cannot commend or recommend her enough. So that concludes this video. Give this video a like if you like tattoos or mermaids or my talking about mermaid tattoos. And finally, if you've got any questions or suggestions or you just want to chat, then write me in the comments and I will talk to you there. And I will see you in another video. Bye guys.